Queen Valrie's scepter struck the obsidian dais with a resonant chime that echoed through the vaulted throne hall, silencing the rustle of iridescent robes and the low hum of suspensor fields. By the eternal compact of Aranthe, I convene this coronation treaty. Let the human delegation present their envoy, and let the stars witness our necessity. Her voice, honed by decades of command, carried the weight of unchallenged sovereignty, though beneath her jeweled mantle, her secondary hearts quickened at the gamble. The chamber's vast arches loomed like the ribs of some ancient leviathan, etched with genealogies of queens past. Arrayed before her were the High Council, faction leaders in their segmented armor, their crest frills flickering in shades of wary amber. At the hall's center, flanked by human aides in stark utilitarian gray, stood Captain Elias Cade. He was unremarkable by imperial measure. Pale-skinned, broad-shouldered, his dark hair cropped short, eyes steady under the glare of coronal lamps. No finery adorned him save a silver clasp bearing the human sigil, marking his role as ceremonial liaison. Valrie's mandibles tightened subtly. Politically expedient, this alliance spouse, but a human nonetheless. Their species dismissed in galactic annals as fleeting opportunists. Elias inclined his head, not the full prostration due an Aranthine sovereign, but a measured nod that bespoke his kind's infuriating egalitarianism. "Your Radiance," he said through the translator orb hovering at his collar, his tone even, devoid of the ritual flourishes her court demanded. "The united human spheres accept the terms as drafted. I stand ready to seal them." The treaty scroll unfurled on the central plinth, its hollow projections flickering to life. Resource pacts, fleet integrations, mutual defense clauses against the encroaching Vorath swarms. Valrie's primary advisor, Lord Thalrix, intoned the formalities, his voice a gravelly drone. But as Elias extended a hand to the neural stylus, his gaze sharpened on the technical annex, the dense lattice of quantum shield calibrations and warp conduit specs, drafted by Aranthine engineers to bind human vessels to imperial grids. He paused, fingers hovering. A moment, if permitted. Without awaiting full leave, another human presumption. He tapped the interface, summoning subroutines. Lines of code cascaded, recalibrating flux tolerances by 17%, optimizing for human drive harmonics while preserving Aranthine overcharge protocols. The projection stabilized, inefficiencies vanishing like mist under dawn. The clauses now align without cascade failure risks. Signatures can proceed. Murmurs rippled through the council. Thalrix's crest flared crimson, his claws scraping stone. Valrie's own frills twitched involuntarily. Her engineers had labored cycles on those specs, yet this off-worlder amended them in moments as if reading patterns in a storm. She masked her intrigue with a regal sweep of her scepter. "The amendment is noted and accepted." "Seal the pact." Elias pressed the stylus, his signature blooming in human script beside her imperial glyph. The hall's suspensors hummed approval, binding the treaty in unbreakable etheric law. Cheers were muted. Formalities not fervor. But Valrie felt the shift. A human at her flank, now indelibly linked. As the assembly dispersed into protocol recesses, Valrie summoned her shadow clerk via neural link. Audit the human's credentials, privately. Every datum, every prior alliance. Elias's intervention gnawed at her. No crude barbarism, that precision. Humans were said to endure sieges without falter, multitask crises as if breathing, but this? Pattern recognition across alien tech, unbidden. Her court viewed them as chaff. Perhaps they were ore. In her antechamber, screened by force veils from prying crests, she authorized the unexpected, a private audience. Not the outer court exile her traditionalists demanded, but 10 cycles here, under her gaze. Elias entered alone, his steps measured on the mosaic floors depicting Aranthe conquests. He bowed slightly, eyes meeting hers without flinching. A boldness that stirred her secondary hearts anew. "Your Radiance," he began, voice steady. "The recalibration ensures our fleets mesh seamlessly against the Vorath. No overtax on your conduits." She circled him slowly, her mantle whispering, assessing. Aranthan stature dwarfed him, her iridescent scales gleaming under lumen globes. "You presume much, Captain Cade. Our engineers are the galaxy's finest, yet you alter their work, unasked." His expression remained composed, a faint smile creasing his features. Humor, not presumption. Observation. Your specs were solid, but human drives pulse differently. A simple harmonic shift prevents feedback loops during swarm assaults. I've jury-rigged worse in field ops, Field ops, galactic records whispered of human resilience. Crews holding hull breaches for days, adapting xenotech mid-battle. Valri probed deeper, her voice laced with regal steel. And your role? Ceremonial spouse, or something veiled? Liaison, he replied simply. Public face, pride at hand. Whatever stabilizes the alliance. Propriety cracked then, just a fracture. She sensed no deceit, only quiet competence. Humans bonded pack swiftly read subtext her rigid court missed. Thalrix would rage, but this one intrigued. You will shadow my vanguard briefings, prove your worth beyond scrolls. A flicker of gratitude crossed his face, not servility, partnership. Understood. The audience shattered as alarms wailed, council reconvening prematurely. In the throne hall, Lord Dravenix of the Purity faction strode forward, his armor etched with xenophobe runes, crest ablaze in defiant scarlet. Radiance.
This treaty compromises imperial purity. A human at the throne?
Their blood dilutes our lineage, their tech taints our shields. And Newlet, or face the disavowal edict. Murmurs swelled like a tide, crests pulsing in agreement. Balri's court fractured visibly, traditionalists nodding, pragmatists silent. Trevenix's accusations struck at her core, succession woes already whispered, her airless reign propped by this very pact.
Humans as inferior crutches?
The galaxy sneered at Aranthe desperation. She rose, scepter aloft, her presence a gravitational force silencing the din. Secondary hearts thrummed fury, but her mind raced. Elias's fix had mended a flaw her own missed. Dismiss him now, and Vorath exploited the grids. Lord Dravenix, she intoned, voice thunder-veiled in silk. The treaty stands valid, sealed under eternal compact. Challenge it further, and you challenge me. Dravenix recoiled but pressed. He amends our sacred work. Improves it, Balri countered, eyes flicking to Elias at her side. Captain Cade serves under probationary oversight. He resides in the inner cloister, reports to me alone. Any breach, and exile follows. The Empire endures through strength, not stasis. The faction leader bowed stiffly, crests dimming to sullen ochre, but the murmurs lingered, a seed of revolt. Balri dismissed the hall, her gaze lingering on Elias. He met it steadily, no triumph, just resolve. Tolerable, this human. Useful, even. Under strict terms, he would stand at her side. As the veils closed, Thalrix approached, whispering urgently. Radiance, the audit reveals depths. Human special forces, engineering prodigies, they adapt like no other. Balri's frills settled, a rare calm. Good. Let him prove it in the vanguard. The Vorath come, and purity alone will not hold. Elias, overhearing fragments, nodded once. In that shared glance, propriety fractured further, not alliance of convenience, but the first thread of mutual regard. The Queen had a shadow now, human forged, and the stars would test its temper. Walry's claws tightened on the armrest of her throne, as High Counselor Lirath rose, his frilled crest flaring in defiance. The human's presence profanes the palace precincts, Majesty. Ceremonial precedence demands his confinement to outer halls, lest we invite ritual discord upon the Empire. The chamber hummed with assent from the traditionalists, their scales rasping in low murmurs, while moderates shifted uneasily. Elias stood at her flank, posture impeccable, his alien eyes scanning the assembly without a flicker of unease. She felt the weight of their shared glance still lingering, a fracture in the court's unyielding facade. Precedence bends to necessity, Walry countered, her voice a silken blade. Captain Cade is no mere ornament. Dismiss him now, and we signal weakness to the Rimworlds. Lirath's mandibles clicked sharply. Necessity? He is human. Soft-fleshed, short-lived. The state reception looms at dusk. One misstep in protocol, and the ancestral rites collapse. Vote now. Confine the outsider. The council divided like a fault line cracking crystal. 7 for confinement, 6 against, with 2 abstaining in feigned neutrality. Balry's gaze swept them, calculating alliances. To yield would embolden the rival suitors' faction. To force the issue risked open schism. The vote stands deferred until after the reception, she decreed. Prove your fears unfounded, counselor, or hold your peace. As the chamber emptied, Elias leaned fractionally closer, his voice a murmur pitched for her alone. The protocols, if you'll permit a suggestion, Majesty. I've reviewed the right sequences. She arched a brow ridge, propriety warring with curiosity. Speak then. But tread the line of deference. Dusk fell like a shroud over the grand reception hall, crystal spires refracting the twin moon's light into a mosaic of imperial blues. Aranthine nobles glided in ordered procession, their robes whispering against polished obsidian floors, while lesser envoys from allied systems hovered at the periphery. Valerie ascended the dais, Elias a step behind as protocol aide, his presence a deliberate provocation amid the council's glowering stares. The rite commenced with precision. Incense braziers ignited in sequence, holographic ancestral sigils blooming in the air. Then came the precedence chant, a layered cadence of voices syncing to attune the hall's resonance crystals. Valerie intoned the sovereign's verse, her timbre resonating through the vaults, but a dissonant hum threaded beneath it, faint as a vein of rot and marble. No one else marked it. Lyroth preened from his dais, smug in vindication's shadow, but Elias stiffened beside her, his hand twitching toward the calm crystal at his belt. His eyes darted, ceiling vents, then the underfloor grates, pattern flickering across his face like code resolving. "Majesty," he whispered, urgent but composed. "The secondary resonator in the east grate. It's detuned. Sabotage. Deliberate microfracture. If it cascades, the crystals shatter the right." Her pulse quickened, but she held regal poise, signaling him with a subtle crest tilt. Elias moved without flourish, weaving through the procession's edge, as if adjusting his ceremonial sash. He knelt by the grate, fingers probing the access panel with practiced efficiency. Human hands, blunt yet deft, bypassing the lock sequence in seconds where an Aranthan guard might fumble minutes. The dissonant hum smoothed, the chant, surging, unbroken. Nobles blinked in mild surprise, but the rite flowed on, sigils pulsing to full glory. Valerie completed her verse, the hall thrumming with validated power. Lyrath approached post-rite, crest half lowered. The human lingered overlong near the grate. Coincidence? Precision, she replied coolly. Captain Cade isolated the fault, resonance restored. His mandibles parted in skepticism. Luck. Surely. Humans lack our harmonic attunement. In her private alcove later, as servants cleared the debris of statecraft, Valerie summoned Security Chief Thalor. The Queen's chambers overlooked the palace spires, moonlight etching shadows across tapestries of ancient conquests. Elias waited in the antechamber, dismissed but not forgotten. "Assess the human's intervention," she commanded Thalor, her voice brooking no evasion. "Not as anomaly. Target the grate's fracture pattern. Was it sabotage? And how did he detect it first?" Thalor's frills quivered, surprise at the order's nuance. Aranthine Security dismissed outliers as chance. She demanded dissection. "As you decree, Majesty. Preliminary scans already show tool marks inconsistent with wear. Human pattern recognition. Unprecedented speed." She waved him out, alone with the chamber's hush. Elias had not boasted, had not sought credit. Merely acted, folding human intuition into her right's salvation. Propriety cracked further. She found herself tracing the alcove's data veil, pulling right schematics. His intervention wove seamlessly, adaptability where her court rigidified. The next dawn, war room briefings convened amid hollow maps of rim skirmishes. Counselors bristled as Valerie gestured Elias to the observation dais. "He remains." His insight stabilized the reception. Now they serve the throne. Lyrath's voice sliced the air. "War councils are sovereign domain. The human dilutes authority." "Authority endures through victory," she retorted, unyielding. "Observe or object elsewhere." Elias settled silently, eyes tracing fleet deployments. Human multitasking evident as he cross-referenced supply logs with enemy patrol vectors, murmuring annotations only she could hear. "Flank vulnerability here, Majesty. Enemy feints masking resupply. Human supply chains teach redundancy. Yours could adapt." A crest warmed fractionally. Not subservience, but partnership's whisper, yet the respite shattered by midday. An emissary from Lord Kether's faction. Rival suitor, ever the shadow, burst into the antechamber. Brandishing a data slate, treachery exposed, this dossier proves the human's espionage. Covered signals to rim agitators, sabotage blueprints masked as advice. "Expel him, Majesty, before he topples the throne." The chamber froze. Nobles clustered, whispers venomous. Elias stood impassive, but Valerie caught the flicker in his jaw. Restraint, not guilt. The emissary, one vexil of the outer marches, bowed low but smirked through it. Kether's pawn, leaking this to fracture the alliance publicly. Counselors clamored, "Verify! Exile the soft skin." Valri raised a claw, silencing them. "Expel on slander." And Kethar's faction surged. "Ignore," and doubt festered. Her gaze locked on Elias, steady, unblinking, then on Vexil. "Emissary, you will submit to discreet interrogation. Security Chief Thalor, extract the dossier's provenance. No spectacle. Truth before theater." Vexil paled, frills collapsing. "Majesty, I but relay. You relay accusations, now relay facts." She turned to Elias, voice lowering for his ears. "Stand firm, Captain. The stars test alloys, not glass." Thalor's team departed with Vexil in tow, the emissary's protests fading down the corridor. Lirath hovered, mandibles grinding. "You risked the Empire on a human's word?" "I risk nothing," Valri said, strength uncracked. "I forge certainty." Alone in the war room's afterglow, she activated a private scan. Elias's calm, crystal clean. Thalor's initial report pinged. Dossier forged, signals fabricated from outdoubted human freighter logs. Vexil cracking already under neural probe, naming Kethar's scripters. But it was Elias's poise that lingered, the quiet endurance amid accusation, the pattern he'd spotted in the right now mirrored in this intrigue. She watched him across the chamber, reviewing maps alone, oblivious to his exceptionality. Humans, it seemed, endured scrutiny as they did labor, without fracture. Propriety strained, intrigue deepened. A sabotage averted, the leak peeled bare. Now, the Queen's gaze sharpened on her shadow, human forged, unyielding. The court would test it further, but Valri sensed the temper, alliance no longer convenience but necessity veiled in regard. High Magistrate Thalor rose from his alcove in the Grand Synod chamber, his frilled crest flaring like a venomous bloom under the vaulted crystal dome. By the eternal veil, ancient statute 47 of the Purity Edicts forbids intimate bonds with non-Aranthine flesh. His voice sliced through the murmurs, mandibles clicking with fervor. This human consort, paraded as aid, yet lodged in the royal wing, defiles the throne's sanctity. I demand immediate review and severance. Queen Valri's claws tightened on her throne's armrests, the chamber's humid air thickening with the scent of agitated pheromones. From her elevated dais, she surveyed the counselors, a nest of schemers, their iridescent scales shifting in uneasy waves. Elias Cadet stood at her right, posture straight as a spire, his human face impassive amid the alien scrutiny. The sabotage in the palace telemetry, averted mere hours ago by his hands, still hummed in her thoughts, a raw edge to the propriety that had begun to fray between them. Counselor Lurvex leaned forward, his voice a silken hiss. "The Queen's alliance with the human polity stabilizes our borders, Magistrate. Review risks fracture." "Sanctity over stability," Thalor retorted, slamming a data slate onto the polished obsidian table. Hollow projections flickered, yellowed edicts from millennia past, barring lesser unions to preserve Aranthine bloodlines. Gasps rippled. Even loyalists shifted, eyes darting to Valri. She felt the weight of it, the factional revolt simmering since Elias's arrival. Now weaponized by religious zeal, her empire teetered on orthodoxy's knife edge, succession whispers growing louder with every concession to this off-worlder. Yet the man's quiet competence had just peeled back a sabotage layer she hadn't seen. Deny him now, and the palace vulnerabilities festered. Her gaze flicked to Elias. He met it steadily, no plea in his eyes. Only readiness. "Rise, Captain Cadet," Valri commanded, her tone brooking no dissent. The chamber hushed. "The magistrate's motion merits address, but not before evidence. You will demonstrate the telemetry breach and its depths." Elias inclined his head, fingers already dancing over the portable interface at his belt. "As you decree, Majesty." No flourish, just action. He synced to the central nexus with a soft chime, his movements fluid despite the chamber's tension. Valri watched, intrigued despite herself. Aranthine techmasters labored in isolation for such repairs. This human juggled diagnostics across 3 layers simultaneously, rerouting power flows, isolating corrupted nodes, cross-referencing logs from auxiliary sensors. Sweat beaded on his brow, but his focus never wavered, endurance holding where her own aids flagged after cycles. A holographic web bloomed above the table, palace telemetry streams, pulsing with data veins. Elias traced an anomaly, voice calm as he narrated. Initial sabotage masked a deeper intrusion. "See here, The power fluctuations weren't random. Someone overrode access logs from within using a relay in the eastern wing. His fingers pinched, zooming to a signature. Encrypted pings routed through a counselor's private terminal. Gasps erupted. Learvex paled, scales blanching. Thalor's crest deflated fractionally. Coincidence. Human trickery to embed himself further. Valry's mind raced. The breach proved penetration from the heart of her court, traitors bold enough to risk Imperial eyes. Elias had uncovered it not by rote protocol, but by pattern linking unrelated feeds. Environmental controls, visitor manifests, even waste disposal rhythms. Aliens in her service followed sacred algorithms. This human improvised, adapting mid-repair to a fluctuating shield matrix that had stumped her engineers. Enough, she interjected, voice like tempered crystal.
Captain Cade, your access is expanded. Full technical logs. Trace the source.
No barriers. Elias paused, interface glowing in his grip. Understood. I'll need auxiliary nodes from the archive vaults for triangulation. His eyes held hers a beat longer. Gratitude unspoken, partnership implied. A warmth stirred in her core. Propriety's shell cracking under regard earned, not demanded. The council stirred. Thalor seized the moment. This grants the outsider undue privilege. I move to table his status pending purity review. Sever the alliance's legitimacy until sanctity is restored. Murmurs swelled into a chorus. Counselor Vexara, ever the opportunist, nodded. The edict demands it. Public legitimacy hangs by a thread. Worlds watch. Valry rose, her silhouette dominating the dome's light. Pheromones of command flooded the air, silencing the fray. She sensed the shift in Elias beside her. Not flinching, but attuned, reading the room's subtexts her courtiers often missed. Humans, it seemed, wove emotional threads across divides her kind navigated by hierarchy alone. Veto, she declared, the word a thunderclap. The magistrate's emergency motion is denied. The alliance stands, fortified by proof of internal rot. Eyes widened. Thalo recoiled, mandibles agape. For 10 cycles, Captain Elias leads the investigation. The council binds to his findings, obstruct, and face the Veil's judgment. Learvex exhaled relief, while Vexara's scales rippled unease. Thalor sputtered, Majesty, this defies peril. Valry cut in, descending the dais to stand beside Elias. Her claw brushed his arm, deliberate, a public seal. The human proves his veil daily. Present your preliminary trace to the council now, Captain. Under my endorsement. Elias nodded, interface projecting the web anew. The manipulation originated from Sublevel 7 Terminal ID 492, linked to a low-rank aide with access to visiting dignitaries. He multitasked seamlessly, pulling manifests while explaining. Cross-domain patterns show intent, not mere espionage but timed to coincide with the Alliance ratification. Someone sought to fracture it from within. Counselors leaned in, amazement flickering. Learvex muttered, He connects refuse cycles to breaches? Our seers take days for such. Thalor crossed his arms, but his crest lay flat, no counter forthcoming. Valry observed it all, her perspective tilting. This human didn't boast. He worked, humble in his excellence, revealing fractures her rigid court overlooked. Respect bloomed, not as attraction's spark but necessity's forge. Duty had summoned him, survival bound them. Yet in his steady gaze, she glimpsed equality's promise. As the session dissolved into ordered chaos, scribes dispatching to vaults, guards sealing sublevels, Elias turned to her privately. This trail leads deep, Majesty. Allies in unexpected places. She held his eyes, voice low. Then we carve it out together. You've earned the blade. He smiled faintly, a human curve that bridged their worlds, honored to wield it. In the chamber's emptying echo, Valry felt the alliance transmute, from political tether to tempered steel. The court tested, they endured. But whispers of ancient law lingered, a hook in the shadows, proof of palace betrayal now Elias's to unearth. Her throne's fate entwined with his unyielding shadow. Lord Kyrinth's voice cracked like fracturing crystal through the chamber's lingering hush. Your Radiance, the ancient codes demand clarity on succession. Name a native consort, secure the bloodline's loyalty before fractures widen. Valry's frill pulsed crimson along her neck, the chamber's vaulted arches magnifying the insult. The council had dispersed, or so she'd commanded. Yet here the rival suitor's faction lingered like smoke from a smothered fire, Kyrinth foremost, his scaled robes embroidered with the thorn sigils of House Vexer. Elias stood a step behind her, his human frame unyielding in the formal tunic that marked him ceremonial spouse, his dark eyes scanning the shadows without a flicker. She straightened, crown gems catching the lumen globe's glow. Loyalty is earned in deeds, Lord Kyrinth, not bartered in echoes. The alliance with humanity stands as decree, dismissed. Murmurs rippled, but Kyrinth bowed sharply, his multi-jointed fingers twitching. As you will, Radiance. Yet the court watches for stability. He withdrew, faction trailing, leaving the air thick with unspoken barbs. Valri exhaled, tension coiling in her secondary lungs. The human at her elbow shifted subtly. Patient, ever the professional shadow. A walk in the gardens, Elias. The air there clears more than minds. Her tone brooked no refusal. Propriety cracked just enough for candor. Politics gnawed like rust. Kyrinth's ploy to paint her human bond as weakness, a threat to Aranthine purity. Yet duty tethered them. Survival demanded it. He nodded once, voice low and even. Lead on, my queen. The garden paths wound through bioluminescent vines, their petals unfurling in the perpetual twilight of the palace spires. High walls of thorny lattice screened the space. Guards posted at intervals. Protocol, she assumed, ironclad. Balri's claws clicked softly on mosaic stone as they strolled, Elias matching her stride with that effortless human gait. Kyrinth presses for a native heir, she said, frill relaxing. Fractionally. He covets the throne through marriage, masks it as tradition. Elias's gaze flicked to a guard atop the wall, then back. Traditions evolve under pressure. Your empire's strength lies in adaptation, not isolation. No arrogance, just quiet assessment. Humble, as humans seemed bred to be. She glanced at him sidelong, noting the subtle tension in his shoulders. Aranthine couriers moved with liquid grace. He carried density, like forged alloy. And you, Elias? What counsel from your delegation's ceremonial aid? A shadow detached from the vines. Too swift, too silent. A figure in Gardener's drab lunged, blade glinting with neurotoxin sheen, aimed at her throat. Balri's frill flared instinctively, paralysis seizing her primary reflexes. Elias moved before thought registered, a blur of motion. He surged forward, shoulder slamming the assassin's wrist mid-strike. The blade skittered across stone. The killer twisted, claws raking Elias's arm in retaliation. Blood welled, human red and stark, but Elias didn't falter. He pivoted, using the intruder's momentum to drive an elbow into its throat spine, then locked the arm in a vice grip honed from field drills she'd never witnessed. The assassin crumpled, gasping, as Elias pinned it face down, knee grinding its frill flat. Guards swarmed, lumen spears humming, but Valri's voice cut first. Secure it. Overhaul the garden protocols. Now. Triple perimeter scans. Vet every soul with access. No exceptions. The captain saluted, hauling the would-be killer away. Elias rose, wiping blood on his torn sleeve. Expression calm as if he'd merely brushed dust. Minor scratches. You all right? Her heart's thrummed. Shock yielding to calculation. Humans. Frail by galactic metrics, or so archives claimed. Yet he'd intercepted a strike meant for death, body-enduring slashes that would cripple an Aranthine guard. No fatigue, no boast. Impeccable timing, she said, voice steady, regal mask intact. But inwardly, the polity shifted. This aid was no ornament. Word spread like venom through ducts. By evening audience, the grand hall brimmed with faction heads. Kyrinth's eyes narrowed to slits. Valri ascended the dais, Elias at her flank. Wound bandaged. Stance unaltered. She raised a claw, silencing the hum. Today, treachery breached our sanctum. Captain Elias Cade intervened, saving this throne with decisive valor. Henceforth he assumes protective oversight of palace security. Gasps rippled. A Vexar advisor leaned forward. Radiance, the human draws peril. Was he the target, or the spark igniting revolt? Kyrinth seized the thread. Precisely. This alliance invites chaos. Exile the off-worlder. Restore native order. Ancient law permits it for stability's sake. Valri's frill held steady gold, authority uncracked. Exile? After he'd forged steel from shadow? No. The court tested boundaries. She would redefine them. Elias stood silent, reading the room's subtexts as Aranthines fixated on overt slights. Humans saw patterns others missed. Bridged divides with unspoken empathy. Exile serves weakness, she declared, voice resonating off obsidian pillars. Captain Cade leads the investigation into this strike. Who ordered it? Who enabled it? His authority is temporary, absolute, and mine to grant. Question it, at peril, murmurs crested, then ebbed under her gaze. Kyrinth bowed, but his claws clenched, dismissive neutrality fracturing into wary calculation. Whispers followed. Archives consulted in alcoves. Queries on human physiology pinging data nets. They endure wounds without collapse, one lord muttered to another. Patterned their strikes like predators, not prey. Volrai caught Elias's eye as they withdrew. You've upended expectations. Propriety thinned. Personal regard flickered through. He inclined his head, humble as dawn.
Just doing the work, my queen. Together we uncover the rot.
In the corridor's hush, her frill warmed, not crimson ire, but amber resolve. The alliance tempered further, politics entwined with proof. Corinth's faction polarized the court, but Elias's shadow lengthened, unyielding. Throne and operative bound tighter, against the blade's lingering echo. Valerie strode into the war chamber, her frill pulsing amber resolve amid the chamber's vaulted gloom, where holographic starfields flickered like captive storms. Report, she commanded, voice a silken blade, as her border admiral snapped to rigid attention, their scales rasping against ornate harnesses. The central projection bloomed with crimson chevrons. Rival fleets from the Thaler Concord and Vexari Dominion sliding toward the Aranthine frontier, exploiting whispers of palace unrest. Admiral Thrin, her most trusted flank commander, inclined his crest in deference. Majesty. Baelor scouts have pierced the outer nebula veils. 3 cruisers repositioning to shadow our relay stations. Vexari heavy assault wings muster at the Hydra Drift. They scent weakness from Kyrinth's failed coup. Our garrisons hold, but probes indicate coordinated timing. Collusion? Balri's claws tightened on the obsidian dais, the chamber's chill air sharpening her senses. Palace instability. Kyrinth's echo rippled outward faster than she had anticipated, her empire's sinews strained. Military posturing alone would ignite the borders she had forged through blood and decree. Eyes narrowing on the projections, she summoned Elias without turning.
Captain Cade, your assessment.
He emerged from the shadowed alcove where aides clustered, his human frame unassuming in the tailored Aranthan robes that masked his operative's build. No flourish, no hesitation, just a steady gaze meeting hers across the hollows. 3 data points align, Your Majesty, Elias said, voice even as he tapped a discrete gauntlet interface, syncing his personal feed to the chamber's nexus. Thaler probe signatures match Vexari encryption echoes from intercepted court leaks. Not coincidence. Cross-border signals bounced through neutral relays, here and here. Augmented overlays bloomed unbidden, threading lines of ghost traffic, patterns Balri's analysts had flagged but not woven. Thrin's frill flickered violet surprise, scales shifting. How? Your clearance doesn't extend to those subchannels, Captain. Elias didn't bristle, merely nodded. Adapted a human diagnostic overlay to your quantum nets during last week's retrofit. Multitasked the trace with routine alliance protocols. Reveals a shared cutout. A shadow broker in the drift, funneling Kyrinth sympathizers' intel to both empires. Valerie watched, frill warming to gold-edged amber as the holofield resolved. Irrefutable collusion, a synchronized snare tightening around her borders. Humans juggled such webs as if breathing. Her Aranthine savants labored cycles over less. Elias's humility cloaked it. No boast, just delivery. His eyes flicking between projections and her admiral's reactions. Reading the room's undercurrents with effortless poise, she felt the propriety of her throne crack, just a fracture. This male, this outsider pierced veils her own blood couldn't. Evidence secured, she asked, testing. Counterintelligence packet dispatched, Elias replied. Synchronized drones spoofed their probes, fed them looped palace static laced with tracker beacons. They'll expose themselves chasing ghosts. By dawn cycle, we'll have command logs implicating their admirals. Thrin exhaled a low hiss of admiration, crest rising, impossible finesse. Aranthine covert wings train lifetimes for such precision. Balri silenced him with a glance, but inwardly the shift rooted deeper. Military bluster would rally her fleets, yet invite escalation, empires devouring each other in the void. Elias's maneuver offered precision, proof to fracture the rivals' unity without firing a lance. We pivot, she declared, frill steadying to regal sapphire. Controlled outreach. No saber rattling. Transmit this evidence to our border commanders, diplomatic channels first, backed by fleet shadows. The admirals murmured assent, but her gaze held Elias's, respect coiled warmer now, tinged with something perilously personal. A partnership's spark amid the intrigue.
You will draft the communique, Captain. Joint presentation to the commanders via secure relay.
Your words, my authority. His brow arched faintly. Surprise quickly masked, but he inclined his head. As you command, Majesty. In the antechamber's seclusion, away from prying crests, Valri paced the mosaic floors etched with ancestral conquests, Elias at her side with a slate humming under his fingers. The air hummed with relay static, the galaxy's pressures compressing the space between them. Your covert training, she ventured, voice lowering from imperial timbre. It threads through human ceremonial roles like this? Elias glanced up, fingers dancing across the slate drafting clauses in flawless Arantine script, weaving legal barbs with evidential hooks. Field operative background mostly. Humans improvise under constraints. It's survival logic from scattered worlds. Your empire's hierarchies are a masterclass in structured power. I'm learning the nuances. She halted, frill brushing his shoulder in the tight space. A breach of decorum that sent a shiver through her scales. His scent, metallic and warm, cut through the chamber's incense. Nuances like exposing collusions others miss. You connect shadows we overlook. Pattern recognition, he said simply, sharing the slate's glow. Your analysts excel at depth. Humans skim wide, link disparate threads. Collaborative edge. Their eyes met, the draft solidifying. A missive demanding rival withdrawal, laced with leaked logs that would sow doubt in their ranks. Valri nodded approval, her claw grazing his in passing. Intentional, testing. Strength met steadiness. Duty's formality frayed into alliance's intimacy. The relay chamber's alarms pierced the fragile accord. A courier drone burst through the access port, its casing scorched, bearing the High Synod seal. Archpriest Lyrith's hologram ignited, his frill ablaze with zealous crimson. Queen Valri, by the eternal crest's law, we convene emergency synod. Your union with the human taints the throne's purity. Court orthodoxy demands trial. Corinth's blade was divine judgment. Submit, or face the faithful's rebellion. Valri's frill flared crimson fury, then iced to steel gray. The religious faction, Larath's zealots, seized the coup's ashes to ignite civil war. Synod summons would paralyze her council. Borders be damned. Elias tensed beside her, slate secured, his presence a quiet anchor. Suspend the summons, she ordered the chambermaster, voice thunderclad. Invoke imperial override. Stability precedes right. To Elias, softer, resolute, you go as my emissary to the border commanders. Present the communique jointly, in hololink. Bind them to us before the synod fractures the core. He straightened, no trace of doubt. Timeline. Dawn cycle. Use the evidence. Turned their loyalty. Her gaze held his, the fracture widening. Trust, not fealty. Return with the borders secured. As he departed for the shuttle bays, frill pulsing conflicted gold, Valri watched the starfield. Fleet shadows loomed, synod tempests brewed, yet Elias's covert weave bought her the breath to strike. Throne and operative entwined deeper, politics yielding to proof's unyielding bond. The realm teetered, but human ingenuity, humble and relentless, granted time to wield the crown's full edge. Valri's claws clicked against the obsidian dais as the synod's herald unrolled the parchment seal, his voice slicing through the vaulted chamber like a vibroblade. By ancient covenant, the High Synod calls formal vote. Her Imperial Majesty shall cede matrimonial prerogatives to hereditary consort or face curtailment of command over the Fifth Fleet and Outer Margraves. Murmurs erupted from the tiered benches, frills pulsing in orchestrated waves of indigo outrage and sly emerald anticipation. Lord Crescen's faction, their eyes gleaming with the promise of her throne's fracture. She stood unmoving, crown frill erect and unyielding silver, surveying the assembly from her elevated throne. The air hummed with the scent of ionized incense, masking the undercurrent of treachery that Elias's absence had only sharpened. Hours ago, his shuttle had vanished into the void toward the border skirmishes. Now, this. Her gaze locked on Crescen, his scaled bulk shifting with false deference. The human alliance mocks our bloodlines, Majesty, he intoned, voice gravel thick. Concede tradition, or we strip your war prerogatives until succession stabilizes. Valri's tail lashed once precisely, silencing the ripple. Tradition bends to survival, Lord Crescen. The invasion fleets mass even now. Your vote invites their blades first. But the chamber's tide turned inexorably. Proxies tallied chits, the count climbing toward quorum. Her mind raced through contingencies, rally the merchant guilds, exile the ringleaders. Yet each path eroded her sole authority further. Elias's parting words echoed. Proof thwarts plots better than proclamations. She signaled her vizier. Transmit fleet feeds. Let them witness. Hollow projections bloomed across the dome, jagged border voids where Aranthine pickets clashed with shadowy raiders. Then, Elias's signal pierced the static, a human shuttle weaving through debris fields, its hull scarred but intact. From the command nexus, Volry watched him orchestrate the impossible, her frill twitching with reluctant fascination. He wasn't alone. A mixed crew of her engineers and his human aides huddled in the cramped bridge, but Elias anchored it all, his voice calm amid the chaos. Vector 37, lock disruptors on the lead corvette. Rilke, sync your scan arrays to my overlay. Elias's hands danced across consoles, plotting trajectories while murmuring diplomacy into a secondary comm. His eyes flicked between readouts, raider formations, alloy stress fractures from recent volleys, even the subtle ion trails betraying cloaked financiers' yachts lurking in the nebula's skirt. Humans endured like this, she noted. 12 cycles without rest, multitasking field assault with subtle negotiation. No tremor in his frame. Rilke, her border lieutenant, hesitated. Frill flickering doubt gold. Captain, their numbers outmatch. Pattern match complete, Elias cut in, voice steady as hull plating. Those yacht signatures? Traced to Crescen's house ledgers, off-world vaults, funding the raiders. Broadcast it fleet-wide, then flank the corvette's weak ventral seam. We've got this. He pivoted seamlessly, patching a live diplomatic hail to the raider command. Stand down. Your backers betray you. Coordinates enclosed. Claim asylum. Expose the plot. The alien captain on feed recoiled, mandibles clacking shock, but Elias pressed, reading micro-expressions across species. A twitch of gill flare signaling capitulation. Explosions lit the void as Aranthine lances struck true, raiders fracturing under combined fire. Elias's overlay, improvised from scavenged sensors and human pattern intuition, exposed the financier's yachts. Merchant enforcers peeled off to intercept. In the synod chamber, gasps rippled. Crescen's frill drained to ashen gray as transaction logs projected, damning his allies. Impossible, he hissed, but proxies reversed chits mid-count, the vote dissolving into stunned silence. Balheri rose, her presence commanding the projections to fade. Heat flushed her scales, not defeat, but recalibration. Hereditary rule had armored her empire for millennia, yet Elias's weave revealed its brittleness. Soul crowns invited fractures. Succession needed anchors beyond blood. Equals forged in crisis. The conspiracy unravels, she declared, voice resonant. Captain Cade thwarts invasion and names its puppeteers. Authority endures not in isolation but alliance. The chamber held its breath as she activated the imperial seal, its glow bathing the tears. Hear and record, Elias Cade, human envoy and proven consort, is hereby elevated. No longer aide, but partner, bound in polity and defense. His council shapes decrees. His hand wields fleet prerogative beside mine. Murmurs swelled anew, some frills defiant crimson, but border commanders' proxies nodded, merchant holograms flickering assent from afar. Elias's face materialized on the central dais, sweat-streaked but grinning faintly through the feed. Operations secured, Majesty. Financiers in custody. Her core warmed. Propriety's formal shell cracking under personal gravity. Respect, yes, but deeper. A pull toward this humble operative who saw patterns where her hierarchy saw only ranks. Attraction flickered, unbidden, his resilience mirroring her own, yet yielding partnership where she demanded fealty. Crescent lunged forward, tail thrashing. Sanctions. We resign en masse. Nobles withdraw oaths until this aberration ends. A dozen lords echoed, chits clattering to the floor. Their exodus a calculated wound. Synod proxies tallied the breach, trade routes vulnerable, garrisons halved. Valry's vizier leaned in, frill anxious teal. They command a third of the Margraves, Majesty. Yield. No. Her decision crystallized, claws raking the dais for emphasis. Political cost be damned. Elias's proof demanded evolution. Enforce reforms. Interspecies pacts shielded under crown edict. Courts legitimize human integration. Partners, not inferiors. She'd broadcast to the realm. Border lords, merchant houses, rally. The human's ingenuity guards us. Honor it. Responses flooded. Frontier admirals pledging fleets, guildmasters sealing vaults against traitors. Crescen's faction splintered, resignations hollowing as pragmatists defected. Elias's shuttle docked amid cheers, his form striding the bay ramps, dusty, unbowed. Valri met him in the antechamber, alone for the first time since the fray. You exposed them, she said, frill pulsing steady gold, not with decrees but weave of field and word. He inclined his head, humble as ever. Team effort, Your Majesty. Your engineers spotted the seams, I just connected dots. No boast, humans moved thus, attributing extraordinary to ordinary collaboration. Her claw brushed his sleeve, a breach of protocol that sent warmth coiling. Consort, she tested the title, voice softening. We rule as equals now. In the grand hall, court assembled under reformed banners. Valri commanded from the throne. Elias at her right. Official, unyielding, nobles knelt, frills subdued. The empire stabilized, not despite the human, but through him. She had been born to rule alone, yet true power bloomed in finding an equal.